Listen and subscribe to the Table of Truth on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. Welcome, everybody, to the Table of Truth. This is your man, Cam. With me, as always, is...
the man they call the Black Professor Xavier, also known as Josh.
As well as...
This is D. I am the professor, the only professor.
Wow. That was aggressive. That was aggressive.
Put some bass in his voice.
I looked away to glance at the game and whatnot, and I heard that. I was like, oh, am I playing somebody?
Bring his attention back, and the only way to do that is to assert the alpha apex predator.
Damn, bro.
Hilarious. Hilarious. And we are back to discuss damn it, Disco.
Disco 2.0.
Damn it, Disco 2.0. So, fellas,
we had to do this twice.
We don't even call it Star Trek.
You know what?
Anymore. We just call it Disco.
Yeah. You know, I said, hey, guys, I want less crying. I want, a little bit more of the crew. I said, I want all these things. And they're like, hey, Cam, I'm going to give it to you. But here's some cardboard. It's just so bad. Like, dude, they swapped out black guy number 1. They brought in black guy number 2. I still don't even know their names. You got Orochi's like talking out of nowhere.
Bryce, okay.
Oh, Bryce. There you go, Bryce. Orochi's like starting to talk now, but now I don't really care. And like, oh man, help me out, Josh. You're a resident Czech person, and
I wish I could help you. I wish I could help you. It's
a lot of sighing. It's a lot of sighing.
Yeah, man. I don't have much for you. They gave you what you asked for. True. And it was give you what you asked for.
Lazy.
Not a good package, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think also they turned book into a sap. Then you had the guest turns, which was dope. Like, Tigna Totaro, more her, is always a good thing. Always. They brought back old security chick who was cool too for like a hot second.
Right.
But I think you're right. It just kind of muddled along. I found myself fast forwarding way more. Normally, you just press play and you watch it and then you're good. Or if it gets a little like dry at some places or there's too much crying, okay, cool. Fast forward. But this time I was just like, yo, what is going on? And I remember I was watching the finale and then I actually checked how much time we have left. And I was like, damn, it's only been 20 minutes.
To their credit. So there were mild positives, let's put it that way. They did return to form in terms of, new life, new civilizations, like literally the ethos of the show, of all things Star Trek, regardless of what version you're watching.
Yeah.
So there was that, and they did that moderately well, I would say. But it's the things surrounding that were just like more sighing for me. It just induced more sighing from me.
Yeah, you're right. And it's just, I don't even know what to call it. Like, there was lazy writing. They were like, oh, we're gonna start having the crew talk now, but they were just like talking. There wasn't anything like happening with them. And then they brought in Fish Dude is on the crew now. And then you had Saru. The only thing I did like was Saru and Romulan chick, Vulcan chick.
Vulcan, thank you.
Who is Fish Dude?
Fish guy with the eyes.
Linus,
yeah, that guy.
Oh, the one that's all of a sudden giving information and he just kind of popped up, but he's been showing up since whatever. But
Linus is hilarious.
Yo, he's like, I got called up to the big league stakes, guys.
Mm-hmm. On the bridge now.
They swapped out black guy number 1, put in me in black guy number 2.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with Star Trek Discovery after season 2 is I think they bit off more than they can chew. and I'm speaking of the writers and the producers, and they've gotten exceedingly lazy with their ambition, or lack thereof. One of the biggest problems is that this show just does not show us anything. They tell us everything except for these moments of highfalutin action in which that's only showing us the resolution. That's not really showing us development of this story. And to your point about, Bryce and then new black guy that replaced Bryce and all the other characters, Owo and Detmer and so many others that I don't know their names and I don't even want to refer to them by their ethnicity anymore because that was just frustrating. But the problem is that they don't give these characters anything to do until it serves the plot. Now that's fine for a few characters, but when you have the Star Trek mode in which everybody on the bridge has traditionally and historically played a key role, and you've gotten to know these characters over the time that you spent with them on the ship, watching, for example, Geordi's struggle to try to date and Worf playing Big Brother, giving him advice, or the Worf preferring prune juice over human liquor. This Earl Grey tea, Earl Grey hot. Those things. Cisco with his baseball and so many other things, and Jake as a writer and all that stuff. Can you say this or any of those things for anyone of the Star Trek Discovery crew? Besides Michael, only thing we know about her is that she's a human who was raised by the Vulcans.
Yeah,
that's all we can say about her, and that we see that there's a progression in her personality and how she handles things, but we have never been given an opportunity to know who the Michael Burnham is, like the vulnerability of Michael Burnham. That's another thing that's frustrating, is that this season we saw a little bit of vulnerability, but it wasn't like something that we haven't seen any Star Trek captain in the past handle with great aplomb. You know what I mean? Like it's just now we're starting to see it in a way that's pulling out these themes that I don't think most Trek viewers care about as much as, it kind of complements the zeitgeist of current society.
Yeah. And I think that, for me, as you mentioned, the vulnerability piece with Michael, I don't even know if I want that necessarily. Like, starship captains are supposed to be made of steel. You know what I mean? And that is taking into account that is a sort of old school mentality of writing your lead character. Your hero is supposed to be but so vulnerable. They're supposed to be, nerves of steel, not really show, too much in the way of emotion, and just, sort of plunge ahead, especially your starship captain. That's just the image that I always have in my head.
Well, she's unshakable in that way. I mean, we've seen her not buck at having to make the
hard decision.
The biggest problem with Michael in the decision making is that they draw out her decision for an entire 40-something minutes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then it all works out. And so that becomes more of a problem for serial storytelling. Now, if this was sort of like episodic and they were, and then she had to make that big decision at the end, boom, and we're moving on to another story, it's fine. But the fact that we're kind of we're dancing around this every time. How many times has Discovery, the ship, been almost eviscerated this season? So many times that I start believing it can happen.
What's funny?
The stakes have gone low too. Yeah.
What's funny though is, for me, I think I don't know. There's vulnerability, and there's so I give you a prime example. Because I was just watching a bunch of Star Trek, I just binged a ton of Star Trek randomly, just whatever whim came to my head, I just watched it. And so I watched Generations. I don't know how long. And so when I say vulnerability, I draw the example of Generations to say, when I talk about vulnerability, I'm not even talking about necessarily, when she thought Buck died, and that touched me. Like Sonequa Martin Green is top-notch actress, and she made you feel that moment when she thought she lost her dude. When she thought Buck died, I felt that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so running parallel to that, watching Generations when Picard is talking about losing his brother, his nephew, and his sister-in-law in that fire. That again, that hit me like every time I watch that scene, it hits me in my chest when Troy walks into the observation lounge and he's looking at a photo album and gets him to talk about it. And he's like breaks down like, "Oh, Patrick Stewart. Whoa, hey, you're crying." So, that gets you. So I'm not even talking about that, but like the stresses of being a commander, of being a starship commander, and her and Saru off to the side, and he's like, when I have stressful moments, I find it really helpful to yell. It's like, you're in the big chair. What do you need? Like, no, no, man, no.
You already know how to take care of your stress at that point.
Yeah, like, come on, B. You done traveled 900 years into the future. You think this little first contact is stressing you out? Come on,
yeah,
son.
There's a lot of softness going on, I would say, in this
B.
This past season.
And
like everyone,
I think there's a fine line between emotional vulnerability and just like whatever it is they do on Discovery all the time.
Melodrama. It's just melodrama for the sake of melodrama, and that's part of what Cam's talked about earlier, which is the laziness of it all. When you're not putting any effort to tell a serial narrative in a way that's rewarding and makes your audience want to come back each week and look forward to that, then all you're really doing is just running through the beats of a sort of narrative that's in autoplay. It's in auto mode. I mean, if you look at, and probably because they were still able to draw from established Trek canon, when you look at seasons 1 and 2, you had issues with small things like the Klingon design and how they were more inhuman than they were in past Trek iterations, and little small things, but there was enough of the tradition meeting the attempt to carve out a new story that was following this hero's journey of Michael Burnham and going from a commander who does her own thing, no matter what, to a responsible Starfleet captain.
Yeah,
it could have been way more interesting than where they took it, because in season 3, it just kind of blew everything up to start over, but nothing was really fully developed or fleshed out. I think it just kept going.
And what's wild is I remember when season 1 was over and the Enterprise pulled up. I remember just like I remember telling you two, I was like, "Oh, come on, you didn't need to do that." And first 5 minutes of the second season, I was like, "Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I'll shut up now." I'll shut up now. And you didn't see the Enterprise again until the end of the season, until like.
Until they left.
3 episodes before the season finale. And when it showed up, it showed up. And the rest of it, and the next 3 episodes were baller.
Yeah.
You're right about how that season ended.
So
in those seasons, I was just going to say one more thing. In those seasons, it felt like a fully immersive world. Like it felt like a fully scaled world. Teaming with life, not just a few, because when they go to the future, was that
it felt lived in.
It felt lived in. When they go to the future, it feels like there's like other than the Discovery crew and the people we see on Starfleet, that nobody else exists in the galaxy. Yeah, we've been to Navarre. Yes, we've been in a room on Navarre. We never actually been outside or in interacting.
It doesn't feel 900 years lived in.
Yeah,
no, it feels like during that period, nothing happened until Michael Burnham and her crew showed up, and then things formed. That's what it feels like.
And so I think now, Discovery ended, big thing happened, blah 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 blah. It's pretty underwhelming. And then it was interesting because at the end of it, because like Tilly pops up. And I wasn't even happy. I was like, "Oh, Tilly's here. That's cool." It's like, okay. Just like shrug, man. And I was like, ugh. And then even with the resolution, and then I did watch the episodes before, so they try to like humanize Tarka more and his reason for trying to kill all these people. And
I could care less about
I was like,
Tarka's motivations were.
Yeah, it didn't.
Anything happening with that guy?
Yeah, it was so flat. Like it just didn't work at all. Like it didn't.
It was an utter waste of screen time to try to humanize that guy after all the things that he was doing, and you couldn't get through to him with any kind of logic. So at that point, he was crossing moral event horizon turf, and we know that his plan was to destroy the DMZ and the DMA, excuse me, the DMA, and that could have caused a bunch of problems and killed people. Yep. So he was irredeemable and not irredeemable, but he was at a sense. He had issues that didn't merit us, the writers, trying to humanize him any more than they already had. He was firm in sadness, and they should have left it at that.
Yeah, I think the character I was most irritated with wasn't Tarka. Like Tarka seemed. You could tell that there was an ulterior motive behind where he started at the beginning of the season and even at the middle point. But I was most irritated with Book. Book made there was a point where like you get that the loss of his nephew and his brother hit him in a different type of way. Like, okay, fine, that's not a problem. But I think they pushed his grief-stricken motivations way past the point of believability. Like there's always a point that, like, I get that he's supposed to be grief-stricken. I just didn't buy that he was that far off the reservation.
Yeah,
anybody told him, like it just didn't sell for me, and
no, it didn't.
And it speaks to a larger point, a larger problem that I had with the season. I think I can, even with something that I'm as attached to as Star Trek, I can look at it objectively, right? I often watch other people watch shows, and it's really easy to dogpile. Like once you get a certain amount of momentum and there are certain things that you don't like, everything's wrong. And I don't necessarily operate that way. So even with Star Trek, even with something that I'm as biased towards as Star Trek, but it just became way too easy this season to just be like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And suddenly you get into a pattern and now everything's wrong. You know what I mean?
Well, I looked at a lot of the positive parts of it. Like, of course they got a budget that's ridiculous. The design is awesome. Like even the 10 Cs, I was like, oh, that's cool. I was telling D, I was like, I love the civilian clothes design when you see them. Because you're right. There's no scene where the president of the Federation goes home and she's talking to her husband or partner or whatever, and then they're having dinner or they're off. Like there's no away scene that cuts away to show any of those aspects of it. And so then before at the very least,
doctor guy.
Yeah.
What?
I said she talked to Asian doctor guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I've seen with a character we had never seen before. That episode. That is ridiculous. Like that is one.
I knew that would set one of you off.
I don't even understand how, even as an actor on that show, you're not like, what the fuck? Like, what? This dude is getting way more, becoming way more important to this narrative than I have been. If I'm Owl or Detmer or Reese or any of the number other, even if I'm Tilly, to be honest. So and especially if I'm Jet or someone that's down there, even Adira at this point, like after Gray left, Adira just kind of was like, whatever. Like, it's just like, whatever. We got an ensign in engineering. She doesn't matter.
Basically. And so I think even when that dude showed up, I was like, wait, what is he supposed to do here? And he literally did nothing to the rest of the show. He showed up, said a couple jokes, did a monologue with the president, and then that was it. He had a couple lines. I was like, why is this dude here? There's really no reason. Now, to switch something, to leave this on a positive note, we can talk about the season premiere of Picard. Woo! And I'm late to the game, so the first 4 minutes or 3 minutes of it was literally better than the whole season of Discovery.
It is true. It is, and it's not even an exaggeration. It's literally 5 minutes of I'm literally invested versus 13 hours of why did I do this? Why did I even spend this much time watching any of this?
You're welcome, D'Angelo.
What was beautiful about the season premiere was the first half of the episode was all catch up. This is where we are with all these characters.
Yeah.
And in each of those scenes, you got more character development from a season 2 show in 20 minutes of this is where Seven is. This is where Rios is. This is where Raffi is. This is where Elnor is. This is where Picard is. And you caught up with every last one of those bastards, and you know everything that's going on, even though there's been a time jump.
Here's where the world is, and there are people in the world. And what? Picard goes to a meeting, and there's a room full of people, and he gives a speech, and they're on Earth, and you can see the clouds in the sky. And
Elnor has joined Starfleet, and he's graduating as a cadet.
Oh, and guess what? There's a whole graduating class of cadets, not just 7. Not just 7 cadets.
Look, Rios is a captain now.
Yeah. So yeah,
and I liked how when he was talking to the Romulan chick, and they had their little moment, and they're like, "Oh, it's been a year and a half since such and such passed away," and that was in the first 5 minutes. They told you within the conversation to 2 characters speaking about a moment, one line of dialogue that automatically pushed us forward a year and a half without putting it on the screen, but without having to all that kind of stuff. And then you automatically were like, oh, it's a year and a half later. I wonder where everyone's at. And then they proceed to show you where everyone's at.
Yeah, exactly.
In brilliant form.
Yeah, it's,
stakes. That's and stakes. They gave you stakes. Second half of the episode was all stakes.
Yeah, they gave
you told you where our characters are. Now let's pour some acid on all of that.
And again, there's a sense of knowing, and this is where I come in to blow everything up. Knowing that because it's Star Trek, everything will be okay. But at the same time,
feel that way? I didn't feel that way walking away from that first episode.
Well, hang on. I'm not, and I'm not saying that what they did.
I didn't feel that way at all. What I'm saying let me interrupt you for a second. By contrast, I didn't care whether or not that was the case with Discovery. I didn't feel like there was one episode of Discovery where I felt like there might have been a little bit of something, and that was when this idiot Tarka threatened the 10C while they were in the middle of while the president and Michael were in the middle of negotiating with the 10C, and then they got thrown out of their realm, like they got thrown out of wherever they were.
Right.
Other than that, I just didn't.
Yeah.
And Book almost but not quite dying.
Yeah, there's like no stakes.
Well, and then so coming back to what I was saying about knowing that, because you threw my whole thought off, Josh. Thank you very much. I was going to a point, and you just threw it off. No, I'm joking. I got it.
Sorry, man.
No. What I was saying was with the stakes as far as Star Trek, because it is a Star Trek show, we know that there isn't going to be maximum calamity. So basically, what I'm saying is, in the end, we know that things will be reset to the way they were somewhat. But at the same time, we are invested on how we get to there. And that's where the real stakes are. It's not about what's happening to them or what's at play. It's about the setup. It's about how they're going to get from A to B to Z. We care about that. And to your point about Discovery, that was never there this season. Maybe in the first episode when the whatever, when the anomaly first opens up and destroys Book's home world. Then you felt, okay, something's going on here, and maybe it's interesting. But because of my PTSD from last season and the burn, I tempered that. I was like, but I bet you, I would bet my salary that it's bullshit. I would bet that in the end,
and you're right.
Bullshit. And I bet we don't find out what that was all about until the second before or very last episode. And we did not until the second before and the very last episode. And that's 13 episodes, people. Yep. 13 episodes.
Yeah, that's the lack of stakes just made it worse. And I think for Picard, in that first, like you said, the first half was like, hey, this is where we're at now. The later half was like, oh shit.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that was dope.
And they didn't have to introduce any kind of crazy new creature, doomsday, everything about to die, end of the world. There's a little bit of that, but not even in the cosmic sense of the thing. It's more like, okay, we know these players, and these players have been at play before, but now they're playing a different game, and we're invested and interested. And what I mean is, to not spoil anything, our boy Q is back. And for anybody who's a Star Trek fan, you already know Q is one of the most the chief adversaries and antagonists to Jean-Luc Picard. So I think as soon as there was an announcement of a show, we all expected Q to show up at some point.
Listen.
Yeah, and they had good cameos. And I think, and as we were talking about before, like, Q is an omnipotent, alien life form. And so when he shows up, he looks like Q from Star Trek Next Generation. Yeah. But then he was like, "Oh, wait a minute, you're old now. Let me match your energy." And then he sits his fingers, and it's the actor in present day, which was a really fun and easy way to kind of,
to explain.
Easy way to show the age. And I totally like how they did that.
Yeah.
I love how they were playing coy with whether or not this was the Borg, and. The anomaly pops up, blows the ship out, off course, literally like smacks it around and it goes spinning off the screen. You see green, you already know it's either Romulans or the Borg. And you probably go to the Borg before you go anybody else.
Especially after you hear the voice, is like, come on, we know.
No. You didn't even get to the voice yet. I'm talking about when the anomaly popped up. But,
yeah.
But then when they investigate, and the admiral comes to comes to Picard's house to come see him, tells him they're asking for him. He pulls up and he's like, this is Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, the Federation, United Federation of Planets. You asked for me, and you hear that voice. You hear Picard. You're like, yo, It's on and popping.
Real
episode is just
and if you watch the Next Generation and all of the movies, specifically First Contact, that that voice and the recognition of Jean-Luc Picard is just like, it just takes you back to that all of the greatness of that storyline, because that storyline with Picard and involving the Borg and the discovery of the Borg, and even Q, because let's not forget, it's Q who is the reason that the Borg discovers the Federation in the first place.
True.
It's amazing that they can take that history and make it fresh from the fictional world and make it fresh in the present fictional universe, and it feels like time has passed, and it feels like this is a different stage of life for these characters, and that's what I appreciate most about the details of the show, is that they're not being lazy, as we talked about its counterpart. It's taking all of these nuances that Trek fans loved about Jean-Luc Picard's story and The Next Generation and the movies, and it's giving it a modern twist, slowly introducing new characters that can potentially spin past his planned final third season, which I love that they're just doing a trilogy of Picard and not trying to milk this thing for 18 seasons. So
yeah. I like that too. I think hopefully it helps, because this Negro's old, man.
He won't have to be able to enjoy his last time on this earth. I mean, that's Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Maybe he'll go to space just like Kirk went to space.
Right. So I think, and I think to come to the wrap, I think that's the biggest thing, where Discovery was trying to do a lot of feelings with the feelings, and it just like it overshadowed everything else and just came out really, really flat. And then Picard was just like right from jump, punch you in the mouth and be like, look, this is where we're at, this is where we're going. All right, let's go.
Absolutely. Here are the players, here are our characters, you know who they are, but let's tell you what they've been doing so that you remember that they are important to this story and into this world. And now let's get busy. And that's what it was. And it worked. It worked completely, 100%.
And I think that's why it's like, for me, if on Disco, like you said, I'm still calling everybody by their gender or ethnicity. I just like, you got blonde girl, black guy number 1, swapped out for black guy number 2, Asian guy.
Girl, I didn't even see her before this season. I don't know where she came from.
She popped up.
Who, Blondie?
Yeah. She popped up
last season.
Before season, she was there last season.
Yeah.
And here's another thing I don't understand, and this is a failure on that development part.
Go.
They all followed Michael to the future, right?
They did.
900. So they all decided consciously to leave behind everybody they loved to travel to the future with Michael Burnham. Now, you would expect these people to have a closer, more familial bond than they're showing, right? Because for a person to decide, Starfleet captain or not, that you're going to leave your entire family knowing you're not going to ever see them again. They will live and die not knowing exactly what happened to you, because remember, they wiped Discovery's existence from the memory, from the alpha memory or whatever. So they trivialized even that. Even then, and we didn't think about that you have a bunch of characters that you have not developed, that you have not given any kind of, because you're putting them in place of the characters that you did. Ash, the Klingon queen, Pike, Spock, Georgiou.
Yep.
Like all the characters that we spent 2 seasons getting to know and loving, in addition to Michael. You wipe them off the board and you place them with all these nameless characters who were there, but we just didn't care about them because they were just there. And now we're all of a sudden expected to care about them. And at the same time, now we're thinking like, okay, why did they come to the future with Michael? We don't come on, was she that great?
No, you're right. I think that's the failing on the overall show. Is just like the bridge crew is so underdeveloped that you don't really care when they do talk about stuff. So,
I mean, they followed Michael out of a sense of duty and saving the Federation. They followed Michael
would have been there. Starfleet and the Federation would have still, if she succeeded, Starfleet and Federation would have still been in the present place, and they would have did everything they did to get her where she needed to go. So they still would have been heroes, but they would have been heroes with the family. I'm just saying, like,
you're right. They got
They made a big decision. And we never know why. We will never know why. And maybe that's the mystery of the show. Maybe that's the saving grace. Figuring out why the fuck those people decided to follow Michael 930 years later. And with that, that's all I got to say about that.
Well, the other thing too, I think I missed the short treks they had before, where they were doing little shorts, the shorties or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And then, but I liked that they enhanced the actual show, and I thought that was really dope. You know, Expanse
doing that though, didn't they?
They stopped doing them.
Two after season maybe into the future.
Yeah, I haven't checked, to be fair.
They
would have popped up on Paramount Plus if they were doing that. They would have been trying to push us to watch it if they had done it. So.
They stopped doing it. I mean, you know, Expanse did that really well with theirs in their final season too, with their shorts. But
switching back to Picard for a second, what I would love is so I watched the episode where I rewatched the episode where Q flings the Enterprise 7,000 light years into the Beta Quadrant, Delta Quadrant.
It's Beta Quadrant. Is it Beta? No, Delta is
Voyager.
Yeah, I think it was the Beta. I think it was the Beta Quadrant.
But it was so the Borg do hail from the Delta Quadrant, but that episode he flung them into the Beta Quadrant,
right?
Which is why they only encountered the one cube.
Right. So the implication is that they had already moved through Delta. What comes
through the Beta?
From Delta through the Beta, and they were closing in on the Alpha Quadrant, basically.
They weren't even aware. So, as the episode goes, they weren't even aware of the Federation until. So Q flings them to the Beta Quadrant to encounter the Borg as sort of a challenge, one of his many challenges for Picard, and I guess Picard as the avatar for humanity itself. But what I want is a rematch or a re-meeting between Q and Guinan, because if you remember in that episode, they met and they apparently have a very lengthy history, and like Guinan had like the cat claws up and the whole bit, and Q was like, whoa, what is she doing here?
There was a little bit of fear in him in that, and that's something that
I would love to see that again.
Yeah. And I like that they showed that, because it was like in Next Generation, you hear about this, you know, character Guinan who's like supposed to be super old, and she's like knowledgeable, one of the old heads, and then we also know Q's one of the old heads too. So then when they meet, you're like,
right.
They know each other. And I was like, kind of like when Q brought his son to hang out with Voyager. It's kind of like showing more layers to those types of things and what they can do and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're right. I think the biggest failings, I think, for Discovery is that it's like not developing their actual characters, not the core, and then also, like you said, just not showing the world that they're lived in. Like it's supposed to be the future, and we've seen basically a ship, searching, like I think Federation,
something like whatever Federation is.
2 seasons in the future, we ain't seen no Klingons yet.
Yep,
we haven't seen a single Klingon, and they haven't even mentioned what's going on with the Klingons, like how the lithium.
There's a thing called one line of dialogue I keep hearing about, and
exactly.
I hear that solves any problem. Yes.
So maybe not many of theirs because they got a lot, but it'll solve a few.
Yeah, it's like I said, my friends are Trekkie as well. He was like, I was fast forwarding a lot. It's like the first half of the season was too much crying. This season was just too much boring. So I was like, yikes.
Yeah.
And then luckily Picard came to help us save the day, which is great. And so,
one quick note, and this is related to Star Trek. The saving grace is that obviously we got Picard, and Lower Decks is amazing, and You guys have testified that Prodigy it's a good kids Voyager, no pun intended, into the Trek world. So that's great, because I like to see Trek stories thrive and do well, because it might be pie in the sky science fiction, but it is smart science fiction, and you like that. And I like Roddenberry's world continuing, and so I'm looking forward to Strange New Worlds. My hope for Star Trek Strange New Worlds is that they stick to the classic and add a little bit of modern to it, but we don't need these long, convoluted, drawn out, big game arcs anymore. Like, I would like the topic of the week with a little bit of, maybe 3-episode arc that's longer. But, if you're going to introduce young Kirk and all these characters, like, don't tell the same story, but also don't go too far into something that ain't recognizable either. So I'm looking forward to Strange New Worlds. Hopefully they've learned from Discovery's mistakes.
Yeah, man. I think we can leave it there, because you're right. I think that could be the fun part, and Orville can stop kicking Discovery's ass.
Wow.
The show that's satirical.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, this is Blerdlines, and we are out.
Peace.